Today is October 8th, 2024. You've joined the Kubeflow community call. We're here to remind everyone that this call is being recorded and it is governed by the Kubeflow code, or excuse me, the CNCF Code of Conduct. So our first discussion topic today is the release update, and Ricardo's going to walk us through as the release manager. Ricardo.
Thanks, Josh. I'll try to be quick here. I know we have some good talks today. One, we have released RC2 for 191 that comes with some fixes with from pipelines, train operator, notebooks, and some other minor fixes in the manifest. So if you are interested to see if any of your potential issues are fixed in 191 RC2, please take a look and let us know if it looks good for you, because our plan is to reach final in about a week or so. That's it for 191. Just wanted to remind everyone, yesterday we officially started the Kubeflow 110 release cycle. We already have the release team formed. We have some people to shadow the release manager for the next releases, so we can get other release managers taking the lead. For this one, I decided to temporarily step in as the release manager for 110 until we get someone ready to take the lead for the rest of the 110 release cycle. We have a proposed schedule here, which we were discussing in during the release team meeting yesterday. Some key dates here. Yesterday, we started the release cycle. Next week, we plan to finalize the roadmap items. In week 6, on November 18th, we'll have the release team checkpoint where we're gonna evaluate if development is already more than 50% done. Then we start creating the docs change plan and the test plan for 110. Before going over the end of year holidays, we'll do a end of year final check in week 9, December 20th. And then we're expecting to reach feature freeze on Monday, January 20th, 2025. The same day we start working on RC0. Then the other day that's important is the March 21st, 2025, when we're expecting to release Kubeflow 110. Of course, it's not yet set in stone. We're still discussing if the schedule works for all working groups. So our next sections will be create the virtual matrix for 110, which includes all the component versions and all of our dependencies, the roadmap highlights for 110, because our deadline is next week, and create the planning artifacts for 110. So the project board, the roadmap doc, and so on. I'm happy to start another release as the release manager, but my mission for 110 is to have other volunteers inside the Kubeflow community who's ready to take the lead for the next releases. That's my mission, my main mission for 110, and I expect to have this done. All right, I think that's it for now. I'll open the floor for any questions or comments.
I mean, I don't think under this timeline, Notebooks 2.0 would be available in 1.10. So if that's not a problem for people, that's fine. But I think we'd probably need another 2 months, probably, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good call, Matthew. We've been discussing if that's a reasonable timeline for having Notebooks 2.0. One of the things we've been discussing is that maybe we could work on with 110 with whatever is the components that are ready on time for the feature freeze on January 20th. And then we can plan a 1.10.1 that introduces notebooks 2.0, because after all, we could not commit ourselves to release notebooks 2.0 GA for 1.10. So probably it will be for 1.11. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I
Yeah,
don't
the
believe it's a
intention,
problem.
like the reason I want to have at least one release where it's an option, if I can, if it's an optional component in the base release, because most people don't update to the patch releases anyway. But like it's because effectively I want people to transition. Like there kind of there's three release kind of cycle. There's the first release where it's available as an optional thing. You know, you can use 1.0 or 2.0. The next release, it's defaulting to 2.0, but you can use 1.0 if you want. Then the last release, we break support for 1.0 completely, and so you have to have migrated before you upgrade.
Totally. Yeah, I understand that. That's part of our committed nature to have the working groups have independent release cycles. So it's up to you anyways. This is something that we discussed. If you feel like this is not a good plan to have notebooks 2.0 in a patch release, we can discuss that as well. But this is one of the options we could think of to have notebooks 2.0 available for 1.10.
Well, I just also think some of these timelines, like obviously over January, nothing will really happen. You know, I mean, so you probably need to bump that, or like
That's
late December, early January, nothing happens usually. So
yeah, that's the reason I added feature freeze on almost in January, because I'm expecting that after the end of year final check, the next 3 weeks will be kind of holidays for everyone. So I'm not considering those 3 weeks as part of the release cycle.
anyway, I don't know. We'll see how it progresses. Obviously, if lots of people jump on board and start contributing more to Notebooks 2.0, it could happen even sooner than this, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, totally. That's why the November 18th, it's the most important date for us in 2024, because it's when we're gonna evaluate how progress we made towards 1.10 release. All right, any other questions, comments? Okay, back to you both, Matthew and Josh.
Okay, great update. Thank you. Let's move into the GSOC presentations, the Google Summer of Code. I believe, Helen, you're up first. If you'd like to walk us through here, let me stop sharing and give you the floor. If you want to share it, great.
Thank you very much. Please wait a moment. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Helen. This summer, I had the opportunity to develop a large language model hyperparameter optimization API in Khatib with guidance from my mentors, especially Andrew. Just to clarify, this API is specifically focused on optimizing hyperparameters in large language models, and it doesn't cover neural architecture search. Today, I'm excited to share my work with all of you, and I look forward to your feedback or suggestions. Before we dive in, since the demo will take about 15 minutes to finish, so let me quickly start it. I wanted to run in the background so we won't have to wait. Please wait a moment until the experiment is created. Okay. Let's go back to the slide. And I want to first begin with the background for this project. Khatib already offers a Tune API, which optimizes the hyperparameters in custom objective functions. You can see use example of the previous Tune API on the right. So users have to define their own objective function, then they can use the Tune API to optimize the hyperparameters inside the objective function. But with the advancement of large language models, we also want to enhance this API to support hyperparameter optimization in LLMs as well. This will simplify the process by abstracting away the complexity of Kubernetes infrastructure, allowing data scientists to focus on improving their models rather than system configuration. Fortunately, we have a good starting point. Thanks to the existing train API from the training operators SDK, we simplify the fine-tuning of large language models using distributed PyTorch job workers. As you can see in this picture, for the train API, users need to set parameters like models, dataset, trainer parameters, and then it uses PyTorch job for distributed training. And the storage initializer here will download models and datasets from external platforms like Hugging Face and S3 and share them across all workers to avoid redundant downloads. So instead of starting from scratch, we reused key components like the storage initializer and the PyTorch job from the Train API to enhance the Tune API in Kttib. Here is a detailed design of this Tune API. So first, users provide inputs like the model, dataset, trainer parameters, the objective metric and goal, search algorithm, resources per trial to set the experiment. Then the Tune API will create an experiment containing multiple trials, each trial corresponding to a PyTorch job. And these trials run training with different hyperparameters generated by the suggestion service. After execution, the results are collected and the best hyperparameters is identified. And with the integration of the storage initializer and the PyTorch job, it allows users to download models and datasets from external platforms and perform distributed training across multiple workers. By leveraging these existing components, we can scale and speed up the training process for LLMs. And next, I want to talk about the use example of the Tune API. So now users have two options. We keep the previous option that user can define their own objective function. And we add another option if that users can optimize hyperparameters for large language models imported from external platforms. It's important to note that the users need to configure the correct parameters for each option, as incorrect settings will result in errors. And we aim to make the experience consistent between the Train API from training operator and the Tune API from the Kttib. One is for the large language model fine-tuning, and the Tune API is for hyperparameter optimization. Here are two examples for these two APIs separately. So we can say that the example seems very similar. So when users want to do hyperparameter optimization after fine-tuning, they don't need to change the model provider parameters and the dataset provider parameters. And the trainer parameters look almost the same, except that users need to set the search space for the hyperparameters that they want to optimize. Here, we want to optimize the learning rate and the R in neural config. And for the Tune API, users also need to set other parameters specifically for hyperparameter optimization, like the metrics that they want to optimize and the optimize type, which is minimize or maximize, and other parameters. And I want to mention one thing is about the resource setting. So we can see that there is a little difference between the resource is setting of the two APIs. So in Tune API, we define a new class, which is trainer resources for distributed training. And inside the trainer resources, user also need to define the number of workers, number of processes per worker, and resources per worker, which is the same in Train API. So this is the two use example of the Train API and the Tune API. And next, let's look at the demo. So let's come back to the demo. Hopefully it has finished. So let me start from the very beginning. In order to use the Tune API, users need to first set up the cluster and then install the cat tape and the training operator control planes, and then install the cat tape Python SDK with extra requires. Then they can start to use the Tune API. So here is a demo code. And we can say that first we need to import some necessary modules. Then for the test code, first for the model parameters, here we use the BERT model from Hugging Face, and then for the dataset, we use the Yelp dataset for the experiment. And to reduce the runtime, I only use the first 8 samples from Yelp dataset to reduce the runtime for this demo. And then for the trainer parameters, we can say here we want to optimize the learning rate and R in neural config. So we set the search space for these 2 parameters. And for this parameter, we want to minimize the train loss, and we want to use the random algorithm. And I said the number of maximal trials is 2, and the parallel trial count is 1. And since I run this experiment on my local machine, so I set the number of workers as 1, and the number of processes per worker is 1. And I set like 2 CPUs and 10 gigabytes memory for the resources of per worker. And since the cat tape will delete the trials after it has succeeded by default. So I set the retain trials to true, just for us to check the status of the trials after the experiment has finished. And then we can wait for the experiment to succeed. So below is the result of this experiment. Let's go to the end. So we can see the 2 trials has all succeeded, and we can check the value of the matrix and the value for the best values for the hyperparameters that we want to optimize. And we can use the following commands to check the status of the trials. So here is just a backup or experiment I has run before, and the Tune demo is the experiment I just run. So we can see the 2 trials has all succeeded, and the corresponding PyTorch job has also been succeeded. And if users want to check the details of the things that happen inside the pod, we can check the we can describe the pod like this. So they can see the multiple containers inside the pod and the events inside the pod. And they can also check the logs of the pod to see the detailed process of the training that happened inside the pod. And besides this way, we can also check the results of the experiment from the cat tape UI. So let me refresh it and select the namespace. So we can see the Tune demo experiment is here. And when we click that, we can enter the details of the experiment. We can see that there are 2 trials for this experiment, and we can see the matrix, the value of the matrix, and the value for the hyperparameters for these 2 trials. So this is a demo for this Tune API. Let's come back to the slides. And since the Tune API is still in the alpha stage, so we still have some future work to do, like add the support for custom metrics, since we only support train loss, and we want to enable distributed training for user-defined objective functions too. And we want to incorporate hyperparameter optimization for model and dataset parameters. And we want to add support for more frameworks. Besides PyTorch job, we want to support like JAX job, TF job, and MPI job. And here is my project summary. So as for the API development, it can like basically divide it into 3 stages: prepare, development, and wrap up. And I have created 5 PRs for the API development. Now the PR for the unit test and end-to-end test are still under review. And after that, I will create documentation for this API to provide some user instructions. And beside the API development, I have also done some bug fixes or added some new features to both cat tape and the trainer parameters. If you are interested, you can check the detail of my work through this link. So that's all for my presentation, and thank you for your time. I welcome any suggestions or problems.
I have a few questions, but I'll let other people go first.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and start and other people can jump in. Early in your slides, you talked about the setting of the GPU. I think it was slide 3, somewhere in there. Is there an option to identify what type of GPU?
No,
No. Yeah. So you can't get to a discrete, like I want a Blackwell.
Now I'm afraid we don't offer this option. So like users can define the number of GPUs inside the resources per trial, but we haven't like provide the option that they can set the type of GPUs that they want to use.
Got it. Got it. No, this is really, really fantastic work that you've done here. It's incredible. And you did such a great job of presenting it very clear. Another question on the storage initiator.
Yeah.
So can you talk about how that's architected and where? So I assume the problem is these large language models are large, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to download them. So where is that being downloaded to? And then how is it being distributed to all the processors? Is that only a single node, or does this work in a multi-node environment? How does that work?
So there are multiple workers for the training, and for the master worker, we have set a initial container. So basically this container will download the models and data sets to a PVC, which is persistent volume claim. And this PVC can be shared with other works as well. So in this way, we can avoid like redundant downloads of the models and data sets. That's my understanding of this one. Or Andrew, do you have any like comments?
Yeah, I think that's right. So basically just like every worker is a separate node, and we're distributing data using the read-only many PVC.
Are you
Yeah,
are you using the fact that containers are cached on the host, or the new Kubernetes 131 container volumes at all?
Yeah, it's a good point. You're talking about image volume source, right?
Because you can also hack that into older versions as well. I'm just wondering if you did something like that.
Are you talking about image volume source, Matthew? Like,
Well, no,
yeah.
that's like the official way to do it, but like there was a way to do it previously that I'm wondering if you have implemented.
Yeah, I think image volume source is interesting. I think the question, what are other limitations? Because I think the containers also, for example, if your model has like, hundreds of billion parameters, right? And maybe a few gigabytes, you're gonna have hit some limitations. But I think it's a good way to explore whether we can store the model as the image and attach this image to the containers, right? yeah, I think on the serving side, we're also trying to see how this can be leveraged
But
as a model part.
it's
Yeah,
very
good.
efficient because it means that if two workers or serving instances run on the same server, they don't have to pull the same image twice.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a couple more questions if others don't. One of them is, what if I want to cancel my request? Like it's running, I'm starting to see some results. I don't like them. These take a long time. Can I cancel that?
Oh, you mean like users have already used the Tune API to start an experiment and maybe in the middle they want to like cancel it, right?
Right. They go, oh, this is taking up a lot of GPU resource. A new, a new thing comes in there. The boss says, stop.
Yeah. I think they can use the command like delete experiment, and then the experiment will be deleted and it will not be like keep running. So the command will be like this. Let me show in the notebook. So like if I want to delete the Tune demo experiment. So here is the name of the experiment, and we add the namespace. And this command should like delete the experiment and it will not keep running anymore.
I think, yeah, I think this also could work. Just that on this, Josh. I think we also can use a suspend semantic. Like, so for training operator, we support suspend. For KDIP, I think it's more trickier. We don't support suspend with Q today, but you can basically use so we support different resume policies within experiment, and which allows, because every trial is actually the PyTorch job, and every PyTorch job running the fine tuning of LLM. So the thing is, like, if you want to suspend, like, for example, if you want to reduce number of trials, you can modify the number of maximum trials with an experiment, and then it will stop the execution of the fine-tuning. And then when you want to resume, you can also modify this back to the maximum number of trials. So we support some sort of the resuming of the running experiments live. This also could be one of the options.
Well, couldn't you also just like have a visualization in like a like the notebook list? Do you have one for KDIP or?
Yeah, but notebook list, what do you mean exactly?
Like you could see the status of every experiment in your profile.
Yeah. I think, Helen, if you go back to the UI, in the UI, we can see every experiment here, right? If you go back to the
Delete them there or something, or make it to the stop, like make a pause button or a stop button or something.
Pause. I think, pause button would be interesting. We don't support this in the UI today. So yes, stopping the experiment similar to pipelines would be a really nice feature to have here, because on the backend side, we basically support it.
Because like that is I'm sure it is supported. It's just like, it can make a lot of sense if you've wasted resources accidentally, but you don't want to delete it, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think this is just wonderful, Helen. I mean, you look at this should have a huge benefit to the time and cost to do hyperparameter tuning on large language models. So it should be very applicable to what people are running into. But even more importantly, it's going to help people provide more accurate or better models.
Yeah, that's true.
I think one of the things I want to add before we jump to the next presentation, like one of the, I think, significant effort here, it's about the consistent UX between the training and tuning experiments, because today there is no an easy way to tune your hyperparameters for LLMs. Yes, you can use other frameworks like RayTune or like use directly Aptuna, but it's challenging still for people to do optimization for LLMs. So this kind of like streamline the ability for do the parameter optimization, especially in a world when people want to quickly take any foundational models, find the best hyperparameters for it, and do the quickly fine tuning for all of them, right? Go ahead, Dimitrios.
Yeah. So first, congratulations, Helen. This is great, and Andre for supporting this project. I have a question. So the output of this experiment is a set of parameters, the best parameters for the best values for the hyperparameters. But since you're training a model, what happens to the model? in the end? Do you store it somewhere? Is there any way to retrieve the actual trained model in the end?
As for the model side, I think we can come back to this picture of the structure of the Tune API. So like each trial is a PyTorch job, and it will be we actually use the trainer from the Hugging Face to run the training. So sorry, I haven't thought about this problem before. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
in the
can.
end, you
Yeah.
have to invoke trainer.save, I guess. So do you do that?
Yeah.
Just to add on this, I think Dimitris, I think it's a good question. I think we got the same question once we present the train API. So yes, we're planning to implement the checkpointer and ability to export the final model from the PyTorch job to your model registry. But yes, at the short term, like user has to modify trainer to export the model on the rank 0, because eventually here we run distributed training, right? So training running across multiple nodes, which means like you need to save the final model on the master node and then export it to the model registry. But this could be done by simply modifying the trainer script.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think we should probably, if there's no one got any more questions, we should probably move on to the other demo. Or do we want to do a topic in between, guys?
No, I think we should let the demo people go as early as possible. That's fantastic job, Helen. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, I will
Thank you
stop
so
sharing.
much. Feel free, I'd love to see if you could like especially presentations like this, they can sometimes translate very well to a documentation page. So like
Yeah.
maybe we could, make an example or something on the Kata website with because you literally just did an example, right?
Yeah.
So like maybe.
Yeah, that's a good advice. I will like add user instructions to provide more like detailed like this. Yeah, after the test.
Like
Yeah.
you can even have the notebook. I don't know if we have the you could link to the notebook somewhere. You could,
Yeah.
because I think GitHub can visualize the notebook. We might even be able to embed the notebook on the website, but we haven't really done that before. But I'm just thinking it doesn't need to be a big part of the website. Just like examples really help users. That's just one thing.
Yeah, that's a good advice. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I will stop sharing.
Okay, are we ready to go?
Just a minute. I need to give permissions to my browser.
Matthew, do you need to provide him permissions?
I think he just said he needs to continue to restart his browser, is what he's saying. Or Slack app, or not Slack, whatever we're on, Zoom. Anyway, how long do you think this will take, person?
Yeah, let's see, Shashank. So Shashank, you're not able to share a screen? Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'll be able to.
Yeah, let's try it.
Yeah. I will just open the presentation. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Shashank, and I was the Google Summer of Code mentee for Project 8, and I worked on KTIP. My mentors were Joanne, Andre, Yuki, and George. First of all, thanks to them for their unwavering support during this time. And uh, in today's presentation, I will walk you through my project, which was about extending the support for additional parameter distributions in KTIP. So I will also quickly run a demo. And this might take time to finish, but I already have um, one completed experiment, so I will share the results from that experiment. Yeah. So So the motivation behind the project was that Ktive currently supports various hyperparameter optimization frameworks like HyperOpt, Optina, and Optina, etc. But and these frameworks offer broad range of distributions such as uniform, log uniform, normal, and log normal. But but the use of these distributions in Ktive was somewhat limited by this time, and by introducing these additional distributions, it will be more Ktive will be more flexible and powerful in conducting hyperparameter tuning. So here is a distribution comparison table between different frameworks, and so I did some research during my proposal time, and so here are some distributions that offers, and we currently support only uniform and uniform. But with my implementation, we will be able to support some logarithmic distributions and the normal distributions. So the key objective of this of my project was to modify the KTIP experiment APIs to support additional distributions, and uh, to update the respective suggestion services such as HyperOpt and OptTuner to support these parameter distributions. I will now quickly explain the different distributions that I have introduced. So let's start with uniform and log uniform. So uniform distributions is used when the parameter values need to be evenly distributed across a given range. So uh, let's say here B is the upper limit and A is the lower limit. And similarly, log uniform distribution is helpful when we expect the parameter uh, value to vary over several orders of magnitude. So uh, in case of log uniform, the upper limit and the lower limit are on the logarithmic scale. And next we have normal and log normal distributions. So normal distributions are used when we expect the value to vary around a central value, which is the mean in this case. And for log normal distributions, the values sampled out by the service are exponential and positive, and uh, uh, here also the values generally vary around a central value. So now the implementation part. So here's an example of the experiment camel. And uh, earlier uh, earlier in the feasible space defined for a parameter type, the user was able to define min and max and the step value. But I have introduced a new field distribution, where the user will be able to define the type of distribution from which the values can be sampled out. So here for this parameter, the distribution is normal, and uh, I have kept this distribution field exclusive. So uh, if even if the user does not want to define a specific distribution for the values to be sampled out, he can also do that, and he can just simply define min and max. And uh, another parameter I'm sampling out is this epochs, and for this I'm using login form distribution. So the first task was to extend feasible space to include this distribution field. For that, I had to update the experiment APIs and the gRPC APIs to support this. Next, we next task was to update the validation for the experiment APIs, uh, and uh, later and once all of this was done, I was able to update the suggestion service logic for hyperop. So the for hyperop, the for we can take example from this parameter defined here. So for this parameter, uh, the user had defined the parameter type double, and the min and max are also defined, and the step size is defined. So if the user hadn't defined the step size, uh, so so uh, so the normal hyperop dot a normal function will be called, and if the user had defined the step size, then we will be using the q normal distribution, which is the quantized normal distribution. And so similarly, for each of these distributions, I have implemented this in the suggestion service. And so one of the key distributions that I implemented was the normal distribution, and which is useful for hyperparameters expected to vary around a central value. So I have so based on the assumption that the uh, that 99% of the sample space varies around the mean, varies around three standard deviations from the mean. So based on this assumption, we have allowed user to specify only the min and max values, and and using those min and max values, we are calculating the mu and sigma. So mu is basically the mean of for the normal distribution, and sigma is the standard deviation. So these mu and sigma were the required parameters for to support normal distribution. And uh, if the step is defined, we use the quantized normal distribution, and if the step is not defined, we use the normal distribution. So I will quickly go back to yeah. So I so we so I started this demo, and so here are the values sampled out by. So I will just show the first YAML file. Yeah, so here we have defined a parameter LR with the distribution normal, and for the momentum parameter, we are using the uniform distribution, and we are sampling out the batch size from the log normal distribution. and these are the values sampled out by the suggestion service. And in this case, the algorithm was random, and so I will just show the results from. So I created this experiment earlier. So here also the I have defined the parameters with different distributions: normal, uniform, and log normal. So we are testing only 3 parameters in this experiment. So that's why, and these were the values sampled out by the suggestion service. And yeah, so coming back to the slides. So my contributions to so far to the project have been that so yeah, so this is the issue tracker for my project, and so far, first we submitted our proposal to the fine-tuned our proposal and submitted the final to the repo. And during the development phase, I added the distribution field to the feasible space and updated the gRPC APIs. And currently, and so the implementation for the hyperopt suggestion service is complete, and uh, it is not yet merged, but it will be merged soon. And I will implement the similar suggestion service for Optuna and Coptuna. And the future work includes some changes to the Ktib SDK and the Ktib UI to support the distribution field. So that will be the scope of the project after I have updated all the suggestion services. That's it. Thank you for giving me chance to present here. If you guys have any questions, you can ask.
Yeah, I think just to add on this, thank you for the slides, sharing and presentation. Thank you. It was great. So just to add, I think like this was the long-standing feature request from Kubeflow users to be aligned with the other hyperparameter optimization framework. So eventually, if, as Shang mentioned, we don't support any of logarithmic or kind of advanced distribution for hyperparameters.
Normal
So yeah. So right now we can be more aligned with other what other hyperparameter optimization frameworks are doing. Have similar functionality within Ktib API. Any questions from the community?
If not, thanks for presenting. Who was your mentor? Was it Andre or?
Yes, Andre Bachman.
I think also Yuki and Jono Yuan helped us with the work. Yeah, so there are a few still pending PRs that needs to be reviewed, and I think this feature will also be included in the next release of Ktib.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Always loved it. Hopefully you stick around and do more contributions. Anyway, Josh, do you want to there's only a small number of topics left, but I just want to kind of go through some of them.
All right, do you want to present them?
Not specifically, but you can just share the screen and it should be enough. I just want to highlight them again. You made some comments last week, but I wasn't here because I was sick. I wasn't able to just say them, which is there's still some website PRs that are coming. So I'm working with the CNCF to fix the DNS entries on the old thing now that the CNCF owns the website. I also wanted to highlight for everyone who doesn't know, or it doesn't really matter to most people, but we've moved from a Google hosted Netelify. Netelify is kind of like a website hosting thing for the kubeflow.org website to the CNCF owned Netelify, just so people know that. So, oh, my Google wants to talk to me. That's funny. So if you do need, if something goes wrong with the website, reach out to the same people as before, James Wu or myself, but like just be aware that it's not hosted on Google infrastructure. Well, Google paid for Google anymore. And the DNS is fully owned by the CNCF. So if you need DNS changes, you need to make a CNCF request. The one change I do want to push for is that first one. Josh, everything else can kind of is going to be handled by the CNCF, but that first, no, the one above, up, the installing Kubeflow version age page. So I know you had some concerns about the emoji, but maybe we could discuss just very briefly what people might be willing to accept here, because I think this will help users understand. So the key changes, that's the current table. And then if you roll down just a tiny bit more, that's the new version of the table. It just puts, and it's all automatically generated. There's no upkeep requirement at all. And when you can't do it in this example, but when you wave over the versions, it would show you the it shows you more information about that version is actually 1.7.1, and then it says this was released on this date, and then it uses some words which say like, hey, this version is a little bit old, you might want to check. And I think I roll down, and if you want to roll down and see those examples, you'll see what I mean. So like you've got this one is the latest, so whatever the latest version is shows like that. And so you were discussing in your comments that you were a little bit worried about the emoji. I mean, or emoji is the wrong word, but like the warning label. So my question for you, Josh, is is it just the skull that's concerning to you, or is it the warning one as well?
So there is a line of discussion that says that even if you're running an older version of Kubeflow, you may be updating it. And so just because you're running, let's say 1.7 or something, you may not be, you may have been adding into it in a way. So I think I see both sides of the story. One of them is people are staying up with the current. The other side is the older versions may not be bad, right? Some people may want long-term support. And that takes a lot of effort to keep something going for a year and a half, or 2 years, whatever it is. So my comment to this was, I don't have a dog in this hunt. And so I really think that this is a decision for the majority of the distributions to make. Right. So I personally am probably not as big or against the skull and the caution. I get the idea behind it, but I'm probably saying no to that. In fact, I think that's what I put in my from my opinion, one person's opinion. But the other part of it is, I don't think this is a KFC decision. I think this is a distribution decision. And I think since this is a distributions page, the majority of the distributions need to do a +1 on whatever the decision is, whatever the design is. That was my kind of comment, hopefully.
I just want to quickly respond before Chase responds here. I have one slight concern with that, is that obviously part of the point here is to encourage distributions to update. And so distributions may not vote in favor of something that makes them have to do work. Also, the thing I just want to highlight you said as well is that people would be like maybe supporting old versions. This is about helping new users, not existing users, right? Who have been doing their updates to their own existing distributions. Because all the ones that are listed here haven't really been updated since the version listed on the 10. Also, I would still like to say with the emoji, while I'm amenable to removing the skull emoji, I do think the warning emoji is important. But I'm open to removing that as well. But then I would the one thing I don't want to, I think it's really important, is that we do have a cutoff line where things go gray, where it becomes gray, at least, you know, so that it's not like blue is like we're saying this is an acceptable version from the community's perspective, and gray is like this is not an acceptable version from the community's perspective. But yeah, that's kind of my thought. Anyway, Chase, you go.
I mean, I like what we're doing here, just helping inform the end user on things that haven't been updated. I think the question is, how can we help educate them and move them towards that? Say, hey, this is the last time there was an update to this, as well as what, as a community, because this is a distribution page, but it's like the community page, the community's vision for this, right? So, as a community, what is community supported? How many N-2, 3, 4 do we do community support? And then what would be considered deprecated in community support versus what's then supported by a distribution. So I'm a little hesitant on the graying out, but I am all for informing, hey, this distribution was last updated XYZ, here's how you talk to the maintainers. Unless we have some conformance rules or another policy we can point to, which then I'm all aboard for.
So I think just like the graying out, I mean like the warning symbols. I mean, I'm happy to just make if it will make this PR get merged more by the KSC, if you know what I mean, like because the KSC has to be the one to agree it. I'll remove the warning icons because I think this PR is very useful, but I don't want to see this PR merge without the graying out from 3 versions old and older, you know, because I think 3 versions older is a really long time. You can see there, like 1.7, and it's still correct, was released on March 29th, 2023, you know. That's a long time ago.
Who is
What
making?
are you warning against though? Like,
I'm
let's
trying
be
to
clear.
so
what are
the
you
reason
warning
I'm
against?
particularly the reason is that for most people, the experience of using something that old is not going to be a good experience. Just because
Who is making?
it's,
Yeah.
Yeah?
Sorry, Matthew. Finish your point.
yeah, no, I was saying it's not the latest version of the product. So from our perspective, it's hard for us as a community to deal with the fact that people constantly raise issues with things that are no longer supported. Like again, this is as an alternative to delisting things as well, because delisting people could still end up adopting those distributions without realizing. Because what happens is people go to the page, they look down the list, and they say, oh, all of these are valid distributions and are being endorsed by the community. But in reality, some of them are so old that I'm not comfortable saying people should use them anymore.
Well, and I think that's a back-end conversation between the community and the distribution, but the distribution is still providing support. I mean, I'm all for if the distribution says I'm no longer providing support on
that's
it,
what I
and it's
mean,
that old,
yeah.
then we could say that, hey, there is no support. As well as
that's what it
educate
says
our
here.
users.
It's warning you that if you haven't updated your code base in like 2 to 3 years, it seems, from my perspective, unlikely that you are currently supporting that feature, even if you're supporting your overall platform. But the point here is that it also acts as a carrot. It says, hey, if you want to actually be endorsed, it's like, I don't want to also just delist them because people can still find them on Google, right? That's the other alternative, right?
Yeah, and I think that there maybe, again, has to be a policy of we need to reach out to the distribution and then say, hey, after 5 attempts to reach out to you, you're maybe grayed or you're in potentially in lack of support assumption, and then hey, if we can't reach out to you, we will put the warning sign that says this has not been updated, and
I mean, we can make the warning a separate concept. So like we can I still think the blue versus gray should be based off N-3. Anyway, Andre, sorry, we ran over your topic.
Yeah.
Sorry, you say what you're saying.
Andre. Who is making decision what version is acceptable? I think it's better to just remove those distribution if they are no longer supporting Kubeflow and being active in the community.
So that is something that we've discussed as well. I think there is some benefit to keeping them listed with a warning. There is some questions about whether that looks worse, as I was saying, because people could still Google, for example, the Amazon distribution, and then the real big problem here is the Amazon distribution, I'll be honest. Because obviously it's been not supported for a year and a bit. It's a huge brand.
Again, distribution is not the end, like platform all the users we should endorse to use for, right? Distribution is just one of the options if user wants to get additional support, right?
Right.
Yeah, but for the vast majority of businesses, an ML platform is important enough that they're going to either pay a vendor or use something from a vendor.
No,
It's
but
just,
this is not. But this is not true for all of the Kubeflow users right now on the
but
stage.
sure, but like, but realistically, like, the reason why Kubeflow exists is because of the distributions. So that
I would
yeah.
argue against that. I'd say the reason Kubeflow exists is to help bridge the model development lifecycle in an open and democratized way.
that's the other way around.
But some
I'm more
users
saying
might
from a
just be
support.
using it. I mean, was it Capital One? I mean, there are users that are just using this internally potentially. We want to be able to have users, if they want to support it themselves and contribute themselves, to choose if they want to
Anyway,
do the
That's
smart
not
money
that's
internally
great.
or
But
externally.
we've already had these discussions about, and that's how the page is laid out. It explains all of that.
No, what we didn't,
This
Matthew,
is
we didn't
a
have
small
discussion
change
with
within a
users.
specific section of the page.
So we should have a discussion with users what actually users want, not like, you know.
Agreed.
So
Okay, but that's not what what users tell me every day is that they.
No, but they should. Okay, go ahead.
What they tell me every day is that they try using Amazon's one, and then they end up having a terrible experience and saying Kubeflow is terrible because it doesn't work anymore, pretty much.
Okay, but in that case, that user should come to the community call and say those.
You're asking a lot from someone who's testing out an open source project to join a community call.
No, so on our call, on the training call, for example, we had end users, and those users that don't use distribution at all, they use individual
Sure.
components in production for many years. And I didn't hear feedback from users that distribution is something that users are looking for while using Kubeflow, at least from my experience speaking with the users. If I have other users, we need to encourage them to come to the community call
Okay, but like that's not a good representative sample. Like there are tens of thousands of organizations using Kubeflow in various capacities, and it's just going to be a biased sample if you find the people who are willing to come to this call. Anyway, the point is, there are distributions, there are individual components, all of which are described on that page. That is all fine. We already had these discussions. I really don't want to have to go through those discussions again.
I am all for like a last update. I think that is really good, Matt. I like
That's like the thing. That's all I'm proposing. Like I'm proposing.
I'm saying,
yeah.
I'm saying careful with the skulls and the grayed out, but I think it is important to say, hey, users, this is the latest release. This is when this was last updated.
What does 1.9 versus 1.8 mean to a new user? It doesn't mean anything, right? It means nothing. Even if they could theoretically Google it. Yeah, but then they have that already. We have a release page, but it is asking a lot of users. Like for a lot of people, they come across Kubeflow, they've heard of it, they have an ML, they have a Kubernetes cluster. They're like, I want an ML platform, right? They'll come to Kubeflow, they'll get to the getting started, and then they'll look at that list and go, I don't know what any of those mean except Amazon. I use Amazon, I'm going to Amazon, or I use Google, I'm going to Google. I use this, I'm going to this. And while that would probably be fine if those distributions were all up to date, they're not. So that's really the problem I'm trying to solve.
So you're really just trying to solve a new user clicking on it and saying, oh, 1.6, they're unaware of the most current version. So you just want to give them a heads up, just so you know this distribution hasn't been updated since XYZ, right? Yeah. And you may not be using the latest version of Kubeflow. So maybe what we need to also have is you may not be using the latest version of Kubeflow, and then further educate them on, by the way, this is how you keep up to date with current Kubeflow versions.
Well, what it says down on each of these, it does say like, this was released X releases ago. It was on this date. Hey, when it gets to the really old ones, it says, hey, distribution may no longer be supported.
So I'm okay with maybe like a yellow, right? Just like a caution.
I think yellow actually is more visually intense than a gray.
Well, gray seems to me like
because you don't want to draw people's attention. Like I want to draw people's attention to the ones that I want people to look at, and so yellow is an attention drawing color.
Right,
so, like,
but if we put a little yellow,
if you roll up just a bit, Josh, roll up, when you're looking at the list of distributions, we don't want to overwhelm people, right? We want to help people draw their eyes. So I'm happy to, again, if the decision is happy to be made by the KSC, remove the warning sign and the skull. That's fine. I really do want to keep the gray and the blue though, but we just need to agree on which version cutoff that happens on.
Yeah, let's discuss this. We could discuss this further. I think this is taken enough community call. The only thing I say is gray to me seems like disabled. Like from a UI perspective, and I don't necessarily want to say disabled. I kind of like the idea of just, hey, heads up, this might be out of support. Reach out to the distro.
So, and we could have blue, but with a warning, but yeah.
But why can't we just get a majority of the the distributions to vote. We've got, you know, Arnuni.
Me, obviously.
You've got Canonical who's engaged. We've got Google who comments. IBM Cloud often will come in. We have Red Hat people here, and we have Kubo and Nutanix. I mean, Azure and Amazon, if they don't reply, I mean, they're still and VMware. We still have a majority, right? All we need is 5. I guess 5 out of 10.
But what I'm saying is,
So why can't we just ask the distributions to weigh in?
Yeah, I think the question is, what is the community's values and what do we advertise as a distribution? How far behind do we as a community, like Matthew's been saying, no longer recommend or sign off on? Hey, it exists, but be careful, it hasn't been updated.
Yeah, that's why I'm against just removing them, right? That's everyone says, I'll just remove it. But then that means we no longer have any say about that distribution's marketing to the end user. That's why I'm against removing distributions. But yeah.
Well,
So
they
like, Josh,
lose
the
out on
reason,
our
yeah, is
marketing.
because I think it is something that the KSC should agree on. Like,
Right.
and again, it doesn't need to be a complicated thing. I don't want to get sidetracked on all these other discussions about how Andre disagrees with the existence of distributions. I get that. He's allowed to have that opinion. But
but they lose out on being on our front page if they're not up to date based on the community values. And if they choose to advertise Kubeflow out of the community, that's totally up to them. I mean, we're not
they
going to
could
decide
end up
who gets
still,
to be.
but the problem is users find things by Googling, right? And so it's better if our official page, until something is like actually like we can discuss what are the conditions under which you would remove something. Right.
I'm still, we've discussed this in the KFC last meeting in the meeting.
KFC.
Kentucky Fried Chicken. The Kentucky Fried Chickens talked about it, and I basically had said and proposed that I really would like the distributions to weigh in here. And per my last comment, I mean, we should be able to get, I mean, the Canonical people are around, the Google people are around, the Red Hat people are around, the Kubo people in we have 5 right there. If we get 5 to say, I'm good with what you're saying, then let's do it. But
I guess from your perspective, though, the KSC should also endorse it, I believe, like, or not. You know, like, I don't want the, like, as whether or not the KSC is representative of the distributions, maybe is a problem. But like
concerning that no one actually given a voice discussing those things rather than you, Matthew, right? From distributions.
Well, it's because I just happen to run by far the most popular distribution. That's obviously why.
So how we can make a decision if we don't have any active distributions other than DPLKF? So should we remove all of them and leave only your distribution in that case?
No, I don't want that either, because that's not good for the community. Like, I want people to actually compete, because if competition improves the quality of the experience for everyone.
Yeah, but these are not what we can do, right?
You're kind of dropping out, by the way.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, we need to, again, I agree with Josh. We need their feedback, at least on those decisions, right? It's not like KSC decision that we should make, right? Because we as a community should just work together and think about what is the right thing for our users, for distributions, and for the community moving forward, right?
Like, so, but what I'm saying is, it's such a simple change that, like, if we can just agree that 1.7 is too old as a community, and that's the cutoff point right now. You know,
the comment was, and you know, for example, with Red Hat is that, you know, they do whatever they want, and
of course
they feel like they provide a commercial support that is comparable to how they collect revenue, and people enjoy what they do. So your argument doesn't hold water in some ways, Matthew. It doesn't. It isn't what's happening in the marketplace. And I also have to go to the core value of the community, which is we push the decisions down to the people who are actually doing the work. And in this case, the people that are doing the work are the distributions, and they should vote, not the KFC. You're saying that we should have a pyramid and top down. I'm saying let the people doing the work vote first. That's all. And I look, as much as I agree with you, I'm trying to hold to what the community was set up to be. I agree with a lot of your arguments.
Yeah, like it's just such a simple change that it's like the only difference is how visually prominent distributions are listed, right? And you can see that I've left it so that every distribution just except 1.7 and earlier are prominent. I agree. I have a lot of questions as to why Red Hat is not updating to newer versions of the Kubeflow tools. But yeah.
So can we just try to close this out before the end of October and in the next
What
two
I'm saying is, do you want me to remove the warning sign? That's what I'm asking you guys.
I would remove the skull and the warning, and then I would, let's push to get the 5 distributions to do a +1. I mean, that I'm glad to do that.
Well, let's get the distribution's opinion, and then let's also open it up to the greater community. Because are we assuming that no one else besides the distributions are contributing? Is that the data point we have?
Or that cares about this? Like, because again, this is really, while it affects the distributions, it is for new users because distributions know what versions are what, whereas new users don't. Like, again, this is primarily just to help people look at a big table and be like, what does this mean? That's the entire purpose of it.
Right, but they're seeing, I 100% agree, but they're also seeing what does this mean based on, this is on kubeflow.com, right? So this is what does this
Yeah.
mean based on the community's messaging, right? This isn't on the Red Hat page. This is on our
Yeah.
community page. So it is
Which is
the
why it's very
community's
neutral.
values and opinions.
Yeah, I agree. It affects the, but it's also just like a practical, like, okay, I want to use Kubeflow, but I don't want to install each component individually. Again, Andre, not everyone wants that. Some people do, and they're allowed to do that. But some people want to install a distribution, right?
So why we don't follow Kubernetes again? Kubernetes logic. Kubernetes was doing this for years, and they don't really put any version on their website.
The reason we don't do that is because, have you tried as a user, the Kubernetes website is useless for learning how to install Kubernetes. Like, it's actually useless.
Mm-hmm.
It's worse than useless, if anything. It's actually actively hinders your ability to use it because there's too many options.
So if users, again, from my perspective, distributions is useful when you want to get paid support, right? Not when you want to try out Kubeflow ecosystem. So you want to
Some
try
of
out.
these distributions are free. In fact, all of them are free with the exception of Red Hat.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I think now we're getting to a different conversation on does there need to be a better getting started page, which could be the core here. Getting started on Amazon, getting started on Google. But then the problem here, the core problem is we don't have a vanilla installation method. So they're forced to a distro due to the complexity of manifests, which could be the real problem.
They could use the manifest, but like but again, if my concern is that the reason why people don't want to use the manifest is because in the real world, an ML platform is a complicated system that lives even in an even more complicated ecosystem. And so for most people, even if it's a free support, open source support by the rest of that community of similar users, it does just make sense. Like, people on DeployKF support each other all the time. Sure, there's an enterprise version, but like the community, every time on the Slack someone posts an issue, someone else is on the DeployKF one at least supporting people, It's quite cool. Anyway, the point is, it's fine. I think we've agreed that distributions should exist, at least should be allowed to exist. Let's try and help users who want to use distributions find ones that are supported. That's kind of all I'm trying to say. So I'm happy to remove that warning sign, and then we can ask if that's what you want, Josh. We can see. I just don't think people are going to respond personally, but we'll see.
I do think this is a greater conversation on the friction of getting started with Kubeflow and understanding the supportability, et cetera. And this could be an opportunity to educate new users and start new users on this path to decide self-managed or distribution, and then have different community values around support. But I do think this is a bigger conversation. And these are pain points we've heard.
What I'm willing to do, and I need to go, but is to say, if we don't get -1s on this with the changes that you've talked about, by the end of the month, we're going to implement it.
Yeah, because it doesn't really affect
negative
people that
on
much.
it. Just gotta say, this is going to happen in this configuration unless we get a majority of people that say no.
Because it doesn't actually impact most distributions. You can see there, most of them are just blue, right? It's like whatever, right? But yeah.
So I'm willing to go the opposite direction if
Yeah.
that will help us move forward. But and I get your point that people tend not to pay attention. But gosh, I mean, I think we could reach out to the 5 and we could get them. I mean, the Kubo guys that they definitely would respond. And John,
Sivo, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've chatted with them before. They're
And the Red Hat people are always here. So I mean,
oh, Red Hat's always, but again, the problem with Red Hat, in my experience, not the problem with them as a company, but the problem with their involvement with Kubeflow is that they're distributed and they're involved on the tools because that's what they care about, the tools, not about the distribution. Because again, they have their own distribution system. Anyway.
Yeah, I say we table this, especially on a recorded call talking about distributions like this. So let's table it.
okay, gonna go. You
Okay, guys.
continue. Yeah,
I'm gonna stop the recording.
thank you.